So this is the OnePlus 8, and you should buy it right now. If you turn off this video to go buy this phone, I won't even be offended. But if you want to know why it's so good and how it stacks against this S20 Plus next to me, keep watching. So in order to talk about why the OnePlus 8 is so good, I first have to talk about why I switched to the OnePlus 8 from the Samsung Galaxy S20 Plus. Now, it's worth noting that this is the international version with Exynos 990, and the OnePlus 8 is the IN2010, I believe the model number is, which is the Chinese version, which has 8 gigabytes of RAM, but it still has the Snapdragon 865 chip. So why did I switch from the Samsung Galaxy S20 Plus? Well, overall, this is a pretty good phone, the S20 Plus, but it had me yearning for more because it had issues that I noticed on a day-to-day basis. First of all is the overheating. Now, I've made a video about this, and this phone is actually running the OneUI 2.5. That's the latest September 2020 update, and the OnePlus 8 is running Oxygen OS 11, which is also the newest software for this phone. But even when this phone was not on OneUI 2.5, it was overheating a lot. And after updating to OneUI 2.5, the overheating got better, but it still wasn't great. It would often overheat when I charged it and when I used it. It had software bugs, it had glitches, and the camera autofocus issues came back after updating to OneUI 2.5. The back material I've never been fond of. I've always felt that it was a little bit cheap. It's a little bit reflective, and it kind of feels like the glass stick in the lower end phones, and it scratches pretty easily and it gets fingerprints and dust on it pretty easily. So I never really liked the build material of this specific phone. The fingerprint reader wasn't that great. It wasn't always very reliable as it should have been. Sometimes it would work, sometimes it didn't. So that's also something that made me want to switch to another phone. The edge rejection also wasn't great. So sometimes when I'm using this phone with one hand, sometimes my fingers would sometimes touch the edges and it would accidentally touch the screen. So there were things about this phone that I didn't really like, and that's what made me want to look for better options out there. So in comes the OnePlus 8. Now, why didn't I get the OnePlus 8 Pro? Well, I really care about form factor, and if you've watched my other videos, I need dual SIM, and both of these phones have dual SIM, and both of these phones are fairly thin, around 8 millimeters. But a lot of the Pro phones and a lot of the higher spec phones coming out these days are actually getting close to 9 millimeters or above and 200 plus grams. And where it doesn't sound like much, it actually does feel quite a bit different in the hands if you hold this versus the OnePlus 8 Pro. Just like if you were to hold this S20 Plus versus one of the S20 Ultra phones. So that's the reason why I didn't get the 8 Pro. And the added features of IP68, wireless charging, and maybe a 120 Hz screen, it wasn't a deal breaker for me. I didn't need those features. Oh, do you see how the mood lighting is red? Well, that's to honor this OnePlus 8, and that's how good it is. It's all about the details. So the build quality of this phone is amazing. I think it's much better than the S20 Plus. So first of all, the back is this matte glass feel. It's kind of like the iPhone 11 Pro line, where it doesn't attract fingerprints and you can't really see when it gets dirty. It's not as slippery as the S20 Plus, and overall it just feels like such a high quality premium material. And the edges are all aluminum or steel or metal. I mean, it feels so nice in the hands. And the vibrate, silent, and sound button has this nice textured feel to it. The screen is just, everything about it is so premium feeling, and there's no extra fluff in it. Like there's no headphone jack, and I know a lot of people need the headphone jack, but I think we're getting to a point where we're kind of getting away from the traditional headphones and we're gonna get towards wireless. So it has everything that we need. It has 2 speakers, one in the top and one on the bottom. And it even came with a case and a screen protector. Now I've taken the screen protector off because I don't really care for screen protectors, but it was actually a pretty decent quality screen protector. And the case that came with it is actually pretty nice. It kind of has this matte finish to it, and it says never settle on it. So overall, this has been such a great experience, and it does have warp charging. And right now, as you can see, it only has a couple percentage battery left. So I'm gonna charge it as I do this video just to show you how fast it charges. Okay, so now it's charged, and you can keep your eye on just how fast this 45-watt warp charger charges this phone. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is the screen. Now, the S20 Plus does come with this QHD screen with 120 Hz refresh, but as you know, you can't use both the QHD function and the 120 Hz at the same time. So most of us keep it to 1080p and 120 Hz. But the OnePlus has a 90 Hz screen with 1080p. And to be honest, you can't really tell the difference between 90 Hz and 120 Hz. You can if you really look for it side by side, but in everyday use, after using both of these phones, I could not tell the difference. So I really like how the OnePlus 8 out of the box has the maximum refresh rate on it, and it's adaptive too. So it does scale down to 60 Hz when you're not using the full 90 Hz, which helps battery life. So next is the fingerprint sensor and the face unlock. So both of these have a front-facing camera, and the front-facing camera on the OnePlus 8 is slightly larger, and it's slightly more into the screen than the S20 Plus. The S20 Plus, it has the camera a little bit higher towards the bezel, so it's not as interfering with the screen. But regardless, both of these have fingerprint sensors and face unlock, but the OnePlus 8 works a lot better, and it's more reliable more of the time. I would say the OnePlus 8 has unlocked using fingerprint, the in-screen fingerprint sensor, about 99 if not 100% of the time, versus the S20 Plus, I would give it about 80% of the time, or 90%. But it's obvious that the OnePlus 8 is just faster when it comes to fingerprint unlock. And for face unlock, I would say they're both the same. I find myself using the fingerprint unlocking a lot more than the face unlock. Now, next I want to talk about one thing that the OnePlus 8 has that the S20 doesn't have, is this volume toggle switch, this volume mode toggle switch. Now, this is my first OnePlus phone that I've used as a daily driver, and I've never had that switch before. But now that I've had it, I don't want a phone that doesn't have that switch, because it's so convenient to just toggle the sound mode that you're on, kind of like on the iPhone. And wherever you toggle it, you see on the very bottom it's ring, so the notification pops up on the bottom, and on the top it's vibrate, and then you have silent at the very top. So depending on where you toggle the button, the notification on the screen moves to that certain area. And that's another thing. So this user interface is just so refined. Everything about it is refined. Now, when we're getting to this kind of sub-flagship level of phones, we're no longer battling hardware. Yes, we can talk about Exynos and how it's overheats a little bit and how one is a little bit faster than the other, but most of the hardware that we have on these phones nowadays is plenty enough for what we're trying to do on them. But the user experience is very dependent on the software. Kind of like, why do we stay with Apple? The batteries are smaller, the screens aren't as nice. There's so many things about Apple that are inferior to Android phones nowadays, but we only stick with it because of how refined the software experience is. And I would say this OnePlus 8 is kind of like the Apple of Android. For example, all the notifications pop up in such a nice and pleasing way, in a way that is not annoying, and they're organized in such a way that you actually understand what you're getting as notifications. It's hard to explain, but it's something that the S20 doesn't do. And for example, when you change the brightness of this phone, it changes it gradually. It doesn't just immediately turn completely dark or turn completely bright. It gradually does it, right? And if you change the night mode on this phone to make the colors a little bit warmer or cooler, it does it gradually, instead of doing it immediately at once. And I know it's not a huge deal, but it just adds an extra layer of refinement, because let's say on the S20, it doesn't, it just immediately changes, which is, that's okay, but it just doesn't have that level of refinement like the OnePlus 8 does. And I really enjoy that, how refined all of these motions are. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is just how good the camera is, because I know a lot of people are hesitant to buy this phone because they're afraid that the camera is inferior, which a lot of other reviewers have said. And I'm going to start posting a couple samples of images that I've taken on both of these phones, both in nighttime and in the daytime. So first, for nighttime photography, I think it's fine. There's going to be some differences. And obviously, the Pixel phones and the iPhones are going to be the best of the best. But taking those aside, if you're not getting a Pixel, if you're not getting an iPhone, I think these cameras are very comparable. I cannot say that the S20 is better than the OnePlus 8, and I cannot say that either one is worse. I would say they're a little bit different in the way they process the image, and the images come out a little bit differently, but not necessarily better or worse. For both low light performance and for daytime performance, both of these phones are just fine. But that's where the difference is. There's one difference, which is how fast the cameras activate and how fast the images are taken and how fast it autofocuses. Because when we're talking about smartphone cameras, we don't just care about the image quality. It's a portable camera, and the best camera is the camera that you have on you at that specific moment. So I found myself sometimes with the S20 Plus where I've taken the phone out to try to snap a photo and it freezes, or it doesn't autofocus, especially after OneUI 2.5. When I try to take a photo, it intentionally takes the image out of focus just by a little bit and then takes a photo. I think it's just a software glitch, but it's a glitch nonetheless. And let me know in the comment section down below if this has happened to you. But for the OnePlus 8, I have not had that issue happen to me ever. Every single time I've tried to take a photo with the OnePlus 8, whether it's night or day, it has turned out to be a decent photo. And to me, that's enough. So if your concern is regarding the camera of both of these phones, I would say it's not a concern. I would say both of them will serve you just as well. And the OnePlus 8, the camera functions a little bit better, but I would say mostly because of its software and its refinement. So for the charging, as you can see, this is already at 23% and it's only been a couple of minutes. Now, I know that the Samsung also has fast charging, super fast charging, but the OnePlus 8 does it faster. I mean, it's something that I've noticed where I can just throw this on the charger while I'm taking a shower in the morning, and I don't have to charge it all night, and it'll be fine for the next day and a half. I found myself doing, 1.5 days on this phone consistently. So I would use it for a full day, go to sleep, not charge it. Next morning, if I want to charge it, I can, but it would last me until at least the afternoon of that day. And then I would just throw it on the warp charger and it would charge, maybe 40 minutes, 50 minutes to get to 100%, and that's it. And the good thing about this warp charger is it doesn't actually overheat when you charge it. I mean, this, I would say, is not even hot. Like, the battery temperature on this app is showing as 35 degrees, and the S20 on Exynos 990 gets to 35 degrees just by looking at it. So even when this gets to 100%, it rarely overheats. It's probably overheated maybe once or twice under extreme heavy usage in this past couple of weeks as I've used it. So another thing about the OnePlus 8 is the dual SIM tray. Now, the dual SIM tray on the S20 Plus is kind of long and it's kind of difficult to manage, but just look at the one on the OnePlus 8. It's so refined and nice. The SIMs stack like a sandwich. You put it in and it has the rubber seal, so I'm pretty sure, and others have confirmed, that this is pretty much waterproof, but they don't go for the IP68 rating because they don't want to pay for the certification. It makes sense. They're trying to cut some costs. So no worries there. I really like how they did the dual SIM tray. Now, the biggest thing I want to talk about is software. I've already said how refined the OnePlus um, Oxygen OS software is, and I did upgrade this one to the Oxygen OS 11, which is the newest one. So everything about this software I've liked. It's just so refined, it's so smooth, everything changes naturally, the gestures, all of these multitasking, it all works really well versus on the Samsung. And I've said so many bad things about this Samsung, but that's only because we're comparing two of the best phones out there. And I have to explain why this phone, the Samsung S20 Plus Exynos International version, made me want to switch to another phone. If this phone was good enough in all aspects, where it didn't have these issues, it wouldn't make me want to switch. But because of these issues, I had to look for something better. I've always had something on the back of my mind, like I wanted something better. And when I found the OnePlus 8 and I've used it, I've noticed the something better. So like, for example, when you're going to multitasking and you're doing these gestures, you swipe from this side to go back and this side to go forward, and you swipe up from the bottom just to go to multitasking. But all that works perfectly on the OnePlus 8, just like on the iPhone. But the Samsung, not so much. As you can see, I put the buttons on the bottom because sometimes those gestures just don't register properly. They just don't work as nicely as they do on iPhone or this Oxygen OS on the OnePlus 8. So again, something that I yearn for, I could use the buttons, it's not the end of the world, but it's much easier with these, these gestures. And just look at the multitasking. It lays out all of the apps that you have open on the bottom. So if I had more, you would see this whole list down here and you can just easily find it and then go to the one that you like versus, the multitasking on all other operating systems is nice, but just these little details on the OnePlus 8 has really caught my attention. And I'm a person for details, so I really appreciate these. Now, the edge rejection on both phones is average. It's better though on the OnePlus 8. I don't find myself touching the edges as much, whether it's due to hardware or software, I don't know, I don't really care. All I care about is the user experience. And when I hold the Samsung S20 Plus, I often get my palm accidentally registering on the screen, but on the OnePlus 8, I don't. So that's just my experience with the edge rejection. And the OnePlus 8, so the default launcher, the Oxygen OS launcher that comes with it is plenty enough for me. On the S20 Plus, I actually ended up going with a couple custom launchers and custom widgets because the default launcher was just not good enough for me. But for the OnePlus 8, the default launcher is more than enough, and it comes with a lot of customizations. You can customize the icons, you can download Android icon packs, and you can implement it onto the Oxygen OS natively, without downloading additional software. So this is called White Icons, and I just downloaded it and applied it, and that's that. And you can have a lot of different widgets, these standalone widgets from OnePlus, and I think overall this is almost like a custom launcher. Everything about it feels really good. Okay, so just look at this wallpaper. You unlock it and it swooshes in, right? And then you put your hand on the fingerprint sensor and it has this little animation. And then when it unlocks, bam, it swooshes again. Those little details. I know it's just a live wallpaper, but I'm a sucker for it. It's so well refined. And it does have all the other functions. It has parallel apps. So for example, if you have WeChat or WhatsApp or Facebook, you can have two instances running of the same app if you have two different accounts for it. It has this hidden app drawer. I think you swipe out. There you go. So you swipe out and then you get this hidden space. If you had those certain apps that we won't talk about that you don't want other people to see, well, you can put it in here, and unless they know about this feature, they won't be able to find it. So it's kind of a nice function of Oxygen OS. So one thing I want to mention real quick is the screenshot. So both of these are very capable of taking a screenshot, right? And you push a couple different buttons and it screenshots, but look how long that took to screenshot on the S20. But just look at the one on the OnePlus 8. So I think it's these two buttons. If you take a screenshot, look at that. I mean, it's so fast. And when you take the screenshot, it has this little haptic vibration that it just feels like you literally just took the screen and like pulled it off the screen or something. So it just instantly pops to the corner, and then you can do whatever, you can swipe it off. But For the S20, you take a screenshot and it kind of just, it flashes and then this thing comes off. Like, I don't know. For me, it just doesn't feel as refined as the OnePlus 8. So that's actually something I noticed when I was taking screenshots and I took one from the OnePlus 8. I was like, wow, it's just fast. It just feels so nice when I took that screenshot. Now, not everything about the OnePlus 8 is amazing, obviously, right? I would say this is my favorite smartphone of all time. Android, Apple, everything. This is my favorite smartphone, but it doesn't have wireless charging and it doesn't have the IP68 rating and it doesn't have 120 Hertz screen. Okay, so 120 Hertz screen, I've already said it's not that big of a deal. It has 90 Hertz, that's plenty fast. 120 Hertz does feel a little bit faster. If I had to put a percentage to it, 20%. It feels 20% faster, but it drains the battery a lot more. So the adaptive 90 Hertz on this OnePlus 8, perfectly enough for me. No IP68 rating, well, I think it does. It has all the seals on it. They just don't want to warranty it in case of any water damage, and they don't want to pay the money to get the IP68 certification. So, I don't even say that's a con. It does, I've watched this phone. I watch YouTube in the shower with it. I'm sure it's fine. So I wouldn't even say that that's a con. And then lastly, no wireless charging. That is a con. I wish they put in wireless charging. I'm sure there is a cost figure to putting in the wireless charging coil, and if they put that in, then this phone would not have been profitable or something like that. So you do have to pick and choose the features that you want, but I do want wireless charging. I have a wireless charger in my car, I have one at my desk, and now with the 30-watt wireless charging, I really wish that this had wireless charging and reverse wireless charging. So sometimes I put my Galaxy Active Watch 2 on my S20 Plus and then I charge it overnight. So is that a big deal breaker? No. I still think that the features of OnePlus 8 greatly outweigh those little cons. And like I said, when we're getting to this high spec of a phone, we're no longer just debating hardware, like Snapdragon 855 versus 865 versus 865 Plus versus 875, 885. It's just going to get faster and faster as long as you're in that flagship range of chips. You should be fine for the next 2 or 3 years. But there's so much in the software that has to do with user experience, because just like an iPhone and how simple it is compared to Android, you need that level of refinement where things are not crashing. There's no glitches. When you want to do something, it just does it. For example, when I get a notification, let's say I'm watching YouTube on the OnePlus 8 and I get a notification that comes up. I get a little button there that says reply. I hit reply. The video will stay in full screen, and then this instance of the app that I'm replying to pops up, and then the keyboard goes onto the other side and I can type something, click send, and then the app goes away just like nothing happened and the video continues playing. Does the Samsung do that? Yes, kind of. But when you're playing a video on the Samsung and a notification comes up and you type something, the keyboard gets a little bit fidgety sometimes, like it doesn't display properly. Sometimes it lags when trying to display, and you try to type something and you click send. The window of that Messenger app still stays there for a while, or the video resizes, or it goes from landscape to portrait. Just really, really small details, but you notice it when you use it on a daily basis. And these little things I haven't noticed on the OnePlus 8. When I use this, it's like a 99% level of refinement. I don't have a single glitch that I can report to you guys. But when I use the S20 Plus, I've noticed a lot of glitches, whether it's just swiping or opening, closing apps, resizing windows, just random little things that I've noticed that were not as well refined. So if both of these were running the same operating system, it would be a very difficult comparison to make. But because we have Oxygen and we have OneUI, the comparison is so easy to make. The OnePlus 8 is the clear winner, and I think that this company is amazing, from the unboxing experience to the level of detail in the software to the beautiful hardware. I think this is a company that we all need to watch out for, that I really hope that they start making watches, maybe the OnePlus Watch, the OnePlus tablet, OnePlus laptop, I would buy all of those. If they could implement what they did for this phone into all these other devices, they are doing something right. And I understand the price point game. I understand that, they're coming out with the OnePlus 8T, the OnePlus 8 Pro, like all these different devices are there for a reason because they have different features at each price point. And I'm sure their margins are not that great where they can just say, oh, well, we'll just throw this feature in or we'll take it out. Everything is calculated down to the penny. So I understand that. And I really hope that we see more devices across all platforms from OnePlus. So that was my video. Thank you so much for watching. You can subscribe if you like. It really helps me, but you don't have to. And I'll see you in the next video.